uh, to hunt down those terrorists, but what more is required at home in order to deal with this particular threat and completely eliminate the menace of terrorism from the country. To understand the answers to all these very pertinent questions, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Shafqat Munir, security analyst. Dr. Munir, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. We really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Dr. Fida Bazai, Afghan affairs expert. Dr. Bazai, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time on Skype, we are honored to have been joined by Lt.Gen. retired Moin Haider, senior analyst. General Haider, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Now, let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Munir. Clear-cut evidence regarding the involvement of the Afghan nationals, to an extent that not only Afghan nationals are involved in these heinous terrorist acts which are being perpetrated in Pakistan using Afghan soil, but also the equipment and now the evidence of that vehicle which was used in that Basham attack was also prepared in Afghanistan. What does that actually show?
See, all evidences are showing that it has happened. Afghanistan is involved. The Afghan people or the trained people from Afghanistan terrorists, they are involved. And the issue is that the weapons and even the vehicle that came from there, it means that there is a sustained kind of a continuous terrorist training groups coming up from Afghanistan. It's not first incident here of the Chinese. See the targeting, look at the targeting, whom they are targeting, Chinese, secondly positions in Balochistan. Why these two? Because here we look at the clear-cut Indian interest, because our ambassador in UN has categorically said that there are terrorist operation which has been sponsored by that, and we know their spy was caught here red-handed, and that has linkages in Balochistan. So why Balochistan and why China? Because in this region, if you look at Balochistan they are targeting, because Balochistan is Pakistan's important area where Pakistan has a lot of plans for developments, and now they want to shatter it, that no development take place. The Chinese are particularly the Chinese engineer and companies, they are taking part in developing projects. It's not just they are coming here for any tourism or for anything. They are developing infrastructure. Infrastructure development means Pakistan would stand on its own infrastructure thing. So targeting infrastructure to stop Pakistan from development is a sustained and purposeful effort by Indians. And there is very clear correlation, not only with these incidents which took place recently you mentioned. Look at the history of many years, even when the Indian companies were operating in Afghanistan soils, they have invested billions of dollars in the infrastructure, inculcating people there and training them. Even when I was went to Afghanistan back in 2007, I was advised by the then Afghan authority that I should not mention that I am a Pakistani. So this kind of mindset is already there. So
okay,
they cannot deny that they are not part of it. So it's very clear that they are part of it.
Right, Dr. Munir, we understand for a fact why India can't digest the pace of the development, progress and the prosperity which is connected directly to the CPAC project, one of the flagship projects of Belt and Road Initiative, Pakistan's friendship with China and the kind of effort and endeavors which are being put in on the part of Chinese when it comes to development and prosperity of Pakistan. Understandable when it comes to India not being able to digest it, and will leave no stone unturned in order to disrupt that. The manifestation of that we have seen also in the case of Kulbhushan Yadav. But what about the de facto authorities in Afghanistan? A quick take regarding that, then I'll move.
De facto authorities in Afghanistan, they are still getting support from Indian. Pakistan is also supporting them in terms of, because we are not against people of Afghanistan, because people need support, Pakistan supporting. But most of them, they have their money in India, they travel frequently in India, and they have business with Indian companies. So they have very clear interest of the de facto, the government, de facto government there, and their leadership. They have inroads in the country, in Indian side of the side. That's why. And the second thing is that India was invited to SCO purposefully, because all these regional power thought that India is a big power, which is no doubt that India might play a positive role. So that's why India was invited when SCO was expanded. But 2-3 times India ditched the regional platform as well. So that's why, because India has a plan for hegemonic
I'll come back to you, Dr. Munir, for your understanding regarding as to if this particular issue has been raised by the Pakistan's permanent representative at the UN regarding India's financing of the terrorist groups.
Yes.
So when it comes to terror financing, the responsibility of the multilateral forums that we see that already exist, how those multilateral forums, especially when you talk about the FATF, how can it go about it when it comes to impressing upon India and holding it accountable? Dr. Bazai, now understandably when it comes to India can't digesting the development in Pakistan related to CPAC, its friendship with China, but what about the Afghan authorities?
Thank you, Jawad, for giving me the opportunity to speak on this important subject. It is very unfortunate since the Taliban coming into power since 2022, there is exponential rise in violence in Balochistan and East-Wal Fata region. So there were, at the beginning, there were expectations that once Taliban came into power in Afghanistan, they will reign the region and they will control the elements that are creating instability in Pakistan. And this was one of the key objectives of Pakistan's foreign policy to to see a regime in Kabul that could give it security guarantee on its eastern border. But unfortunately, that has not been happening. And I honestly don't understand the Taliban reason for not controlling these elements or supporting these elements, because it is one of the major question over the legitimacy of this regime. When this regime came into power, Pakistan was one of the first advocates of this regime to be recognized internationally. But unfortunately, there was expectation from them that once they come in power, they will retain these elements, these terrorist organization, they will reign on them and they will control them, but the opposite is taking place. Since they coming into power, we see exponential rise in violence in Balochistan.
Okay, Dr. Bazai, I have a point. I just want you to elaborate it a little further. Going back a little in time, back in 2021, before that, when the Afghan peace and reconciliation talks were taking place, and then the Doha Peace Accord. Now, Doha Peace Accord is an instrument of the international commitment, right?
Right.
When we talk about the stance of the Pakistani authorities at that particular time, as far as I remember, if I'm correct about it, it was categorically reiterated that Pakistan didn't have any favorite as far as whoever comes into power in Afghanistan. All Pakistan wanted was peaceful, stable, and united Afghanistan, right? So it doesn't have to deal with what Pakistan wanted at that particular time. It is that international commitment the new incoming authorities in Afghanistan had made to the international community that they won't allow their soil to be used against any other country, including the allies of the US. So Pakistan doesn't happen to be the exclusive case in that particular regard. Your take regarding that?
Yeah, that is true. I mean, Pakistan was not the only country that was asking, but they have given international guarantees, and this was one of the guarantees they had given to international community, that Afghan soil will not be used against any country. But what unfortunate, we have seen that since Taliban coming into power, we have seen that it is being using continuously against Pakistan, especially by the TTP. And this is beyond expectation. This was beyond understanding. This is not only important, as we can understand that in this new period, as the war between state is no more taking place. This non-state actor is becoming a security threat. So it is now become a security threat for Pakistan. Taliban has to take it very serious. If they don't control these elements, there is possibility of further tension in the future. Therefore, there is a serious need that they should control these elements.
Right, let me proceed towards General Haider. General Haider, when we talk about the very important presser made a couple of days before by the DGISPR, establishing for a fact that the Afghan national was involved, particularly when we specifically talk about the Bisham attack that targeted the Chinese engineers. Also, the plan was hatched back in Afghanistan. Also, the vehicle that was used in the attack was also prepared there. Now, there is a statement that has come forth as a reaction to that particular statement and the presser by DGSPR when it comes to Afghan Defense Ministry spokesperson. Again, a denial, saying that Afghan nationals are not involved in such matters. Isn't it a continuously developed pattern whenever such heinous act happens in Pakistan? Pakistan authorities get hold of the concrete evidence of Afghan involvement in that, and later on there comes a denial by the de facto authorities. How do you look at this pattern, sir?
Yes, we must understand that as long as Soviet invasion was there and Mullah Omar was the ruler of Amir of Afghanistan, and Pakistan was helping them along with the United States to defeat Soviet invasion, they were with their hearts and soul and their mind with Pakistan, and they did not want any harm to come to Pakistan. But the second phase in which NATO and American forces attacked Afghanistan and Pakistan lent them a shoulder and gave 2 airfields to them and other facilities, with which some Afghans got, annoyed and angry. I mean, they're public. Number 2, many of the Afghan leaders during Soviet invasion later were living in Delhi. They had close relations with Indian intelligence, and they were developed relations, and they penetrated into Afghan intelligence all activities of sabotage which took place in Pakistan had a clear signature of Indians providing them intelligence and other activities, and Afghans providing the manpower. As far as TTP is concerned, which is based now in Afghanistan mostly, they fought alongside Taliban against their enemies, and they developed some relations with them. And in spite of Pakistan telling them that you should now disassociate with TTP and ensure that they don't harm or attack Pakistan, they, on the surface of it, they say, yes, we will try, but you should speak to them directly and listen to their grievances. But the fact is that since they have fought alongside the Taliban, they are not very firm in dealing with them. And Indian intelligence is making use of these people and also certain Afghans to attack Pakistan territory. And what are the aims? The Indians then are very clear as discussed. They don't want the CPEC projects to go through, in which Pakistan's Gwadar port will be developed, industry will be developed, and economy will improve. So you see the choice of their targets is Chinese engineers. It is our strategic dams at Vasu and Bisham and other places that they attack these places so that Chinese are discouraged and they withdraw. So this is very clear. And unfortunately, Afghanis feel the Durrani line is still an undecided matter. Although legally, after 100 years, it is Pak-Afghan border. But nobody clearly says so from the Afghan side. And they want that business as usual, that people can go to and fro and indulge in smuggling and narcotics export through Pakistan to European and other destinations, which they have been doing. And also in the name of Afghan transit trade, get many items like supari, which they never use in Afghanistan, and refrigerators and electric equipment, and you name it, tires and machines and engines, vehicle engines. They all take them to Afghanistan, take a tax on that, and dump it back in Pakistani market. So after the construction of the barbed wire fence, it has become difficult. So they're feeling the pinch. So in spite of many dialogues with the Afghan government and with their people and trying to explain to them, wholeheartedly, they have not tried to control the TTP or other elements coming to Pakistan with nefarious designs. And I feel that apart from Afghan intelligence, Taliban are all over the country, and all these Taliban are a good source of information. Any untold, illegal, other activity is very easily reported to their leaders. So, but they are not from the core of their heart serious to resolve this issue. So we keep raising it in the UN, in the OIC, elsewhere, but fruitful results have not come. We have to make sure that we keep our security guard up and we tackle with these incidences with firm hand and to resist Afghanistan from indulging in such like activity. We have to put our guard up.
Right, point well taken. General Haider, when we talk about the de facto authorities in Afghanistan, the Afghan Taliban, as you have already mentioned, we know for a fact that TTP and the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan have been fighting against the international troops together. Now, that makes the TTA, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Afghanistan, reluctant in taking concrete action against the TTP. Now, at the cost of what? Towards more isolation? Aren't they realizing that with no concrete action against the TTP, they are pushing themselves towards more isolation, and that international recognition is going even at a further distance from them?
I think they don't care much about this as long as their neighbors, Iran and China, are with them, and they have some sort of, uneasy working relations with the United States. I mean, they go along. I went 3 times to meet Mullah Umar on the advice of the government of Pakistan when I was interior minister. And I said the world is saying that Osama bin Laden is required in many terrorist cases all over the world. And now the Soviets have gone back and they say he's still indulging in such like activities from your soil. So why don't you resolve and tell these people to go back? He says, how can we tell these people to go back? Many of their people came here from all over the world, from especially Muslim world. They have fought alongside with us. Some of them became shaheed and their graves are also in Afghanistan. And after the war, they have got married here and they have settled down. How can I hand them over to America or to anybody else? They have been our comrades in arms. I said, okay, I think you have a point there, Mullah Umar. But at least you can tell them to follow international rules and not to use Afghan soil against China or, Chechnya or other places. At least you can tell them that, okay, live as like good international citizens without disturbing the peace of the region. So you can see from that point of view that TTP and TTA, if they were fighting together, they have a soft corner for each other and they will continue to shield them in one way or the other.
Dr. Munir, when we talk about the denials, a continuous pattern on the part of the de facto authorities, what does that actually establish?
I think they want to establish that they are not part of it. They want to not to make China angry, because China is one of the guarantors of Doha agreement, and more of it, China has facilitated Taliban leaders, inviting them in Beijing and providing them some sort of initial support without recognizing officially. So China's support was there, and somehow Iran's support was there. But now with the Iranian president tour to Pakistan, and now these revelations by Pakistani authorities that Afghan Taliban are involved in Chinese murder. So I think this is a now serious time Pakistan should take up at diplomatically. Iran also would not be away from us now. That's a thing. Secondly, China should be a country which can really move and push now. We have to work with China, providing all these proofs that the Bisham incident and who are involved in it. So these things should be brought forward by the Pakistani government before the Chinese government. I think China and Pakistan together can push and make them realize that they are doing a mistake, because either they are the TTP or TTA. Both are ideologically, both are the same. They have the same ideology, and for that ideology they are supporting each other. So now there is a time that Pakistan should sort it out. And secondly, in earlier discussion you have made a point about why the world should not take action against India for terror financing. For that, Pakistan also need to have an aggressive diplomacy, and there should be the full dossier should be. Earlier Pakistan gave dossier to foreign ambassadors in Pakistan. Now the Pakistan should actually take it aggressively at the world level, meet world leaders and apprise them of what terror connections are with India, particularly targeting CPAC, Chinese and Balochistan. So that's the right time now that Pakistan should come with an aggressive diplomacy on it, and also give a clear message to the Taliban leaders that, well, there is no apology. We know and we are very clear about it, and we reserve the right to retaliate, and Pakistan can do it. So that's not difficult for us. But the issue is that they should come to seriously on the table, looking at the spirit of the Doha agreement, and now one of the guarantor has been hit by them, China. So that's why now situation is in a different way where Pakistan can raise it at globally and particularly with China.
So if there is a pattern of India's involvement as far as targeting China and Pakistan both and trying to disrupt the CPAC related projects, how Pakistan and China could collaborate on this particular front, keeping aside for a second the responsibilities of the Afghan Taliban, the India factor?
On India factor, China has influence on some influence on Taliban, and you know, with these diverse thing coming up, see, if they are targeting CPEC, harming the Chinese and Pakistani interests, if they are doing some sabotage activities in Balochistan, they are directly hitting our progress. So two ways are there. In one way, there could be some sort of a doubt that against China or CPEC, there might be some American interests. This is also coming, and that might also be through the regional player, which is India, which is the now playing side with side America. So that could have been one thing. The second thing is that Pakistan and China can have dialogue with some of the Taliban, which are, I am sure some of them, they are not harmonious. Even within the de facto regime, there are certain groups who are supported by China, and Pakistan has been supporting them all along, but now they are creating problem for us because of their Indian connection. China and Pakistan should take up seriously, and I am sure they will take up, because now all the evidences are there. There is no denial that in Basham incident the TTA was involved, not only TTP. So their vehicles were there, all the evidence leads to there. China would not tolerate it as far as I know the security policy with China and Pakistan.
Right. Dr. Bazai, repeated denials, the pattern of it quite established on the part of the de facto authorities in Afghanistan. Pakistan had to go to an extent of launching an attack inside Afghanistan's territory, that step of the last resort. What are the options at this point in time with Pakistani authorities other than resorting to that particular last option? How Pakistani authorities can go about it in continuously impressing upon that de facto authority there and getting some dividend out of it, a concrete result?
I mean, there are two options that are available with Pakistani government at the moment. One is definitely there is, it is a kind of international attack because they attacked on Chinese citizen and engineer inside Pakistan. So a third country is involved here. So it is a good opportunity for Pakistan and China to pitch this case internationally, especially against India, when there is already credible evidences against India in international media that India has been involved in assassination in various countries. So we can see that pattern here as well. We cannot ignore. This is the new kind of tactic. And one thing else, already there is established relationship between TTP and India. These two things could not be ignored. So at this moment, it is high time to pitch this internationally and to pitch it against India in the same narrative that as India has been involved in targeting in other countries, especially in Canada, in America, we cannot spare the chances of their involvement in this case as well.
That is to the extent of sensitizing, first of all, the international community about the nefarious designs of the Indian regime, working especially under the Bharatiya Janata Party led by Narendra Modi. We have seen in the case of Canada already, the Canadian Prime Minister on the floor of the House saying they have credible evidence of India's involvement in the murder of a Canadian citizen on the Canadian soil.
Yes.
And their bilateral relationship nosedive like anything. And now, most recently, we have seen the statements coming from the top officials of the Indian side, again twisting that particular fact, saying perhaps it was the political compulsion for the Canadian government in order to pinpoint fingers towards India. So if Pakistan and China collectively go about sensitizing about India's nefarious designs worldwide, what could be the reaction from the Indians when it comes to them twisting the reality?
I mean, we have seen one thing when these allegations came from credible houses internationally. So now India does not have any feet to stand on, especially on the matter of international assassination. So India, at least on this case, does not have as credibility as it was having before these international criticism on India. Now it is established that it is a pattern in Indian foreign policy to go for assassination, to go for interference in other countries, if it could not spare developed countries like Canada, Australia and America, how could we expect India not to intervene in Chinese investment in Pakistan through TTP? There is very strong possibility of this nexus.
So when it comes to dealing with the Afghan Taliban, if they've got connections with the Indian side who is aimed at disrupting the CPAC related projects and the friendship of Pakistan and China, are there any options collectively at the hands of the Chinese and Pakistani authorities to go about launching some development or some sort of incentives for the people in Afghanistan? Perhaps that could alleviate any sort of concern when it comes to the de facto authorities.
Pakistan has already started retaliating against Afghan Taliban support for the TTP. I mean, we have seen that closing of border and then Afghan refugees. These all are the reaction of Taliban support for the TTP. But when it comes to this particular incident, when evidences appear that there are Afghan nationals are involved, so now it is a time that India, Pakistan and China both collectively pressurize the Afghan de facto regime of the Taliban to clearly distance themselves from the TTP and come up with a clear strategy against the TTP. Otherwise, in this situation, it would not be possible. And one unfortunate fact, now there is a growing relationship between the Taliban regime in Afghanistan and India. So we can expect that they would be getting some kind of assistance from India as well.
Right. General Haider, when we talk about India factor, now how Pakistan and China can collectively go about it? First of all, a couple of observations made by other panelists also, sensitizing and pitching the case internationally forcefully. How do you think both the countries can collectively go about it in highlighting the fact about the India's malicious and nefarious designs?
Yes. You know, Chinese normally don't interfere. Chinese don't interfere in other countries' internal affairs. This is their established policy, unlike many other superpowers and many other countries. Number two, I took a message to Mullah Umar. The Chinese have complained that your people are going in Muslim Kashgar area and trying to preach Islam and subvert their loyalties towards. So I said, China is your very close neighbor. They are neutral. They have never harmed you. And remember, they have the veto power. If something comes, against Afghanistan, they are the only one who can save you and bail you out. So it is better that you don't spread Islam there, and you respect the international regulations on cross-border things. But now China is really involved in developing Afghanistan. They are taking out minerals from there. They are helping them in many other technical fields. And China has all the expertise, all the extra capital, and they are very close. And I think they'll be more reliable than the countries which have attacked Afghanistan, in the recent years. And now, in this case, China has been hurt by these attacks on its nationals on Pakistan's territory, and the fingers are correctly pointing out towards Afghan's government and Taliban, Afghan Taliban and TTP. So I think China is the best to bring pressure on Afghanistan rather than America, rather than any other country. Because they are the ones who are helping them. They are very close to them. They have all the expertise to help them. They're already in Afghanistan on many projects of minerals and other things. So I think that will be a good move if Pakistan and China join hands against Afghanistan on this issue, and also against India, with which, of course, China also has many border problems with them, and some sort of pressure should be brought on India also to desist from such like actions.
Right. General Haider, when we talk about the border fencing, a gigantic step already taken by Pakistan. Now, what else is required on the part of Pakistani authorities in order to check or curb that cross-border infiltration? What else is required?
I think if you have a glimpse at the Chaman Kandahar border, if you or the Torkham border, you will see hundreds and thousands of people crossing either way, and hundreds of thousands of trucks passing either way. So if somebody is bringing weapons, under apples or under, grapes or whatever, we don't have that scanning type of equipment actually on the border control. Scanners were fixed, but I don't think they're so effective. So the governments must have a, understanding to stop these things. But all the same, we have to improve our border management system, our intelligence system. We have to further regulate, and all illegal Afghans who have no permission to stay, no UN card, this campaign to send them back must continue, because many of these Afghan elements are involved in Karachi incidents of crime and dacoities and killings. So to improve things, we have to fight terrorism strongly, and we have to have better management controls on the borders and continue at the diplomatic and other levels to continue to prevail upon them to desist from these activities in the benefit of the development of this region. So if there is peace, we'll all develop and we'll all reap the benefits of this peace and development and progress.
Right, Dr. Munir, the border fencing, better border management, the control system over there, better scanning. Where should we actually be looking for support in that regard?
I think support is that we should have a clear mandate with the border security forces, that there should be no compromise on the border principles, the border controls. Now, what happens at these borders with Afghanistan, because the people, those who are posted on the border post, they are from the same region, and sometimes there are complaints or there are reports that they allow, or sometimes they give concession people cross to one side or the other side, because on both sides there are tribes living together since centuries, and then there is a thinking among the people, those who are on both sides of the border, that this border control should not be for them. And internationally also they claim that since they were having the relation since long, half of the families are here, half of the families there. So they claim that this is the right to cross border. So that's the right. But now we have done fencing and all these things. So that's why still there are some relaxation. The only thing is that we have to strong our intelligence network. If people are crossing, whether normal people are crossing, so they should be looked up at differently, and the other people, those who are in the garb of normal people coming up, they should be checked, and there should be a tight control by the security agencies, and particularly in terms of the intelligence. Intelligence should be not only this side of the border, even inside Afghanistan, so that our intelligence should be advanced, telling us which sort of groups are coming up. That's why even that system prevails at the moment. It's not that it's not there. That's why we are doing the intelligence based operation, but that should be strengthened further inside Afghanistan.
Right, Dr. Bazai, the border fencing and what else is required in order to ensure that doesn't happen to be cross-border infiltration of such elements in particular?
I mean, my position on border issue is slightly different. We must not stop our total trade at border, because our trade has been taking place for centuries at that border. So our establishment must be aware of any consequences of border management policy over the local there. Any terrorism that is taking place is not taking place through regular channels. Pakistan and Afghanistan border is porous, it is long, and it is passing through various mountains. So all those illegal and violent activities are not taking place through proper channels. They usually cross borders on the unfenced areas or the areas that are not patrolled, because it is almost like 2,600-kilometer border. Humanly, it is not possible. What is important to understand, there should be state policy, possibility of crossing is still there, no matter what you do. Even America could not protect its border with Mexico instead of having the entire resources in the world. So humanly, you cannot stop the entire border. What is important, there should be clear state policy of no support for terrorist organization. This is what is demand of the time. I mean, management cannot improve to that extent.
If such a long and porous border going through such a rugged terrain is not humanly possible, what about the technology? Even in this age of technology?
I mean, with technology, you can make it difficult for them, but you cannot make it absolutely secure. This is what is reality of Pak-Afghan border. Pak-Afghan border, if anybody has seen that area, if anybody has visited that area, would witness this thing that it is not possible to completely fence that entire region. With technology, you can definitely bring improvement in the moment of people, you can develop mechanism, but you cannot completely stop infiltration from either side.
Right. General Haider, when we talk about the statements, often we have seen the US high-ranking officials, particularly the State Department, coming up with the statement of unequivocal, unconditional support to Pakistan in eliminating the menace of terrorism. Again, this new statement by the State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, that we remain committed to working with Pakistan to address the shared threat posed by terrorist groups throughout the region. What these statements? How do you analyze these back-to-back statements on the part of the US authorities?
Is in a position to help us. When I was Interior Minister, we negotiated with them, and we got from them, these fixed-wing aircraft with long flight duration, with very sophisticated cameras, which could patrol the border and pass on the real-time information to the control rooms on the ground, in which they could even read the number plates of a vehicle. So if you see an odd vehicle coming, there is four-wheelers, dollars they call, in which narcotics and smuggling and terrorists. I mean, this can be intercepted. Also, we had taken from the Americans help in giving us an armed squadron with night capabilities, that we could take action against such groups when they were trying to cross the border, when there was no fence at that time. So, I mean, this is, I'm not sure whether these are still, the squadron is there, armed squadron, but I'm not sure about the fixed-wing planes, if they continue to surveil our border. We can ask America that if they're serious to help us, to please re-equip us with this equipment, so that we can be in a better position to forestall the movement of such terrorists into Pakistan.
Right. Dr. Munir, your understanding regarding that, what do you understand of these statements? And if the US has to support and help us in dealing with the menace of terrorism, as per General Haider, re-equipping us with that equipment so that we can check.
I think we should discuss with them, we should engage with them. That's a positive beginning. And on terrorism, they have always been saying that Pakistan is victim of terrorism, and that is acknowledged by other world power also. So now that's the time that we should banking upon this statement, not only on statement, but with some sort of a concrete plan. So we should discuss our plan with them, and that would be helpful for us.
What could be expected possible concrete plan when it comes to US support to Pakistan? Is it
that could be, they can support us in joint intelligence operations. They can work with us on, because the lot of leftover weapons are there. At least they can provide us information that these kind of weapons are already there, and where they left it, and how they can be made inoperative.
Don't you think after more than 2 years have passed, the mobility of those weapons or the leftover weapons which were
even there, not there, but at least their nature could be revealed, and if we know the nature, we can make a counter plan how to counter them. So that at least there could be many things, not only on the weapon side, but also internationally. For example, as I earlier said, we need a rigorous diplomatic offensive. So this statement can support us in that way as well. So it can be raised internationally that we are facing this terrorism, and this what we call terrorism 2.0, that should be tackled with a joint action and rigorous kind of action by the
Right, Dr. Bazai, your closing quick remark regarding as to what support expected from the US.
I mean, I am more in the favor of policy level support. There should be a strong pressure on the Taliban that there must not be any kind of support for TTP kind of element. So if, because this cross-border terrorism has the potential to trigger even state level terrorism, state level violence, which could easily go out of control and could destabilize the entire region. So it must be understood in that context, and United States has a shared interest in this regard in the reduction of violence and countering of terrorism.
Dr. Fida Bazai, Afghan affairs expert, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Dr. Shafqat Munir, security analyst, thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Lt.Gen retired Moin Haider, senior analyst, joining us on Skype. Thank you very much for your time with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for being with us.